I cared about what people said. I really listened. You know what I mean? Really listen means you hear what they say, you let it go into yourself, you push aside your own prejudices, which everyone has, and you hear the other person speak. I did that naturally. I did that. I still do that. When someone speaks to me, I push aside my thoughts. I don't care what I think. I care what they think. I care what they're saying. I care what they're not saying. I found that people wanted to tell stories, but mm, they didn't get the chance. So I gave them the chance. It was a film I was hired to film called The Fight, and there's a fight between Frazier and Ali. Ali, it didn't much matter that he was black. He was a character. Everything he said was poetic, shocking. It's like Paul Simon or James Taylor. They seem to write poetry. Um, they write poetry. They speak poetry. Uh, yeah. So Muhammad Ali surpassed race, I feel. I was a civil rights advocate, so I hired black people as cameramen and soundmen in my crews. That was rare because they weren't able to join the union at first. Union didn't accept them, camera union. Um, and the ones who got in were they were not black inner city people, certainly not as we know today. The two cultures, the culture of the inner black inner city and the rest of America is split like that. They're two totally different cultures, like we're living in a different country. That's kind of sad. Uh, the black people that entered the careers that I knew, they were college educated, they were smart, they were very self-conscious. They knew that the person looking at them was seeing them as black. If you interview your ancestors while they're alive, put it aside, your grandchildren will really love looking at their grandparents and see connections that are inarticulate, that are
Yeah,
not articulated.
yeah,
You'll see what the genetic link. They say we're 14 generations. We carry our genes for 14 generations, including trauma, especially trauma. If you have
yeah,
a trauma in your early life, that's carried to the next generation, and you end up with anxiety. You didn't know where it came from. That's fascinating to me. Why am I anxious? Why does that make me anxious? Well, you don't understand. And it's coming from your great grandparents. And Tom Carvel came on. I'm Tom Carvel. I'm in
yeah.
Riverhead, Long Island. We make ice cream cakes. How do you like the ice cream cake, Joe? And Joe says what he thinks. I love those commercials. They were real. I hate commercial advertising. I don't know about you, Sequel, but it's fake. They're doing fake with a lot of fancy editing and digital effects. I don't like it. I believe an ordinary person talking to the camera, a real person, would have more effect on people. And knowing who the audience is critically important, I think. Everything I make a video every day on YouTube. And I know who I'm talking to in part because the viewers comment. I read the comments. I can see what they're interested in, what they care about, how they want to tell their own stories. I get a huge amount of stories, Sequel, on my YouTube channel from people telling their stories about the experiences they've had. I love it. I read them.
So two people who spent a lot of time in the 1970s. Sifu and I grew up, born in '62 in New Jersey. Dad worked on Liberty Street and then in the World Trade Center 15 years after that. So I was in New York City quite a bit, went to Ranger games because I was a big fan of the Boston Bruins. I also liked the Rangers, but I was a big fan of the Bruins. and saw the circuses when they came through. Did not see professional wrestling. Did not see Dr. J in Philadelphia when he came to New York live in person, but I met him in 1999 in the south of France when he was playing at a celebrity golf tournament. So those are some of the highlights of the famous things that I've done, and some of the non-famous things, which to some people are famous, is the
Who is
famous.
your audience? Who is going to listen to this? I don't
Well,
know who I'm talking to, so you
yeah,
have to.
you're talking to people who like rare stories, and when I landed on you, I would call that a rare story.
Okay.
The original man on the streets. So David Hoffman is coming to us, and you're on the Pacific Coast right now.
Yep. Santa
Where are
Cruz,
you?
California.
Oh, Santa Cruz. Love Santa Cruz. That's where I learned to surf. I lived in Sacramento for a long time and then Santa Barbara. So Santa Cruz is near and dear to my heart. So, David, maybe if you wouldn't mind, tell us how you got into listening to stories probably as a kid and then telling stories later on, and share a little bit of that bio with us.
How I got into telling stories. I always was a storyteller, and I found that I was more interested in other people than in me. That's still the case today.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm interested in other people. I like their faces. I like the way they tell stories. And all the people around me, the neighbors where I lived in Levittown, Long Island, and New York City is filled with storytellers. So when I started, 16 millimeter was the camera. And it was just, they just developed a handheld camera. And the handheld camera was 49 pounds and the one on your shoulder. So that wasn't anything like Man on the Street. The thing was heavy. And then the sound was a boom, and a microphone was hung down from it. Took two people, cameraman and soundman. There was no camera with the mic on it at the time. I decided to go into the street because, well, my first job was asking people what the word brotherhood meant. I had a job for television to ask people what brotherhood meant. And I went into the street and asked, what does brotherhood mean to you? And I got incredible responses. Mostly, oh, I don't want to talk about that touchy subject. And that film is on my YouTube channel now. Um, Man on the Street was mostly you ask a question and you tell the person in front of the camera, please repeat my question because my microphone won't pick up my question. And the person started off by saying kind of the question and then sounded like an idiot. So I stopped doing that. And I think something about my face, and I cared about what people said. I really listened. You know what I mean? Really listen means you hear what they say, you let it go into yourself, you push aside your own prejudices, which everyone has, and you hear the other person speak. I did that. Naturally, I did that. I still do that. When someone speaks to me, I push aside my thoughts. I don't care what I think. I care what they think. I care what they're saying. I care what they're not saying. I found that people wanted to tell stories, but mm, they didn't get the chance. So I gave them the chance. I say, don't you mean to say this? Now you could call that directing. Don't you mean to say, like you grew up in New York City, Siku, don't you mean to say what New York City means to you today? And then you'd answer me. And that would be the start of my interview. And that's what you see in my work in the early 60s and later 60s and later 70s, A Man on the Street. Eventually, all kinds of filmmakers, and of course now, all kinds of filmmakers do A Man on the Street. It means you walk up to someone and say, hey, can I talk to you? What are you doing? They say, well, I'm making a television show. Well, now it would be, I'm making a YouTube video.
So I'm going to play a little bit about the clip from the 1970s on Wall Street, and then I'll ask
Oh,
you to share some of your thoughts on that. And here we
Oh,
go.
okay, sequel.
David Hoffman, filmmaker, with another clip from 1979. Now, this is a clip that 1.5 million of you have already seen a version of. Wall Street, people just answering one word questions. I've changed it, I've added to it, and I want to tell you a bit about it. So, Wall Street at that time, first of all, let's think about what I'm doing. I'm doing the information age, the coming of the information age. Of course, you go to Wall Street. Wall Street's where it's happening. Wall Street, where computers are beginning to trade in 1979, where people are savvy, you'd think. Some of them are and some of them aren't. But the camera on the street is still new. Although I did my first Man on the Street in 1964, you can see that film on my YouTube channel. Man on the Street was still thrillingly new in 1979. People were not worried about copyright protection, about privacy. They really were more curious and they wanted to appear on television. I'm interested in how they looked, the clothing. Notice how well dressed people were and how well they spoke. This wasn't just any part of America, of course, it's Wall Street. But take a listen to the last guy, because the last guy answers more than one word. Most people are answering one word because that's what I asked of them. Why did I ask for one word? Because we were building a montage, it's at the opening of the film, where people just go one word, what do they think of the information age? What do they think of computers? What do they think of government? But every once in a while I was smart enough, thank God, to let someone ramble. So you'll hear a bit more.
What do you do? What's your job?
I'm a fixed income salesman.
What do you feel about your job?
It's good, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Who do you think has the power in society?
I think the working class does. There's a lot that they can do. They can organize themselves.
What is the word, what does the phrase information society mean to you?
Way of organization, way of determining things, way that the American people are.
You know, the most interesting thing about that for my YouTube subscribers is not the answer to the question. It's who they are, how they're dressed. Wall Street at the time is classy and people are dressed right. And there's an amazing amount, as people point out, of good-looking people on Wall Street. It was a job for good-looking people. New York
No
City,
question
good-looking,
about
yeah.
that. Do you remember the first time you've heard the word information age, David?
Yeah, yeah. I got a job by a brilliant writer who created the term information society. He noticed that computers were in the banks, post office, airport, but people didn't notice yet. They didn't notice computers really. Most people didn't have a computer in 1979. In fact, I think there were 8.5 million computers in the world at that time. So I entered a world, Wall Street, where they knew what a computer was, but they hadn't heard the information age. Now we live in the information age. There's no more than the agricultural age is gone. The industrial age, well, it's gone, I think. I know there's still a lot of industry, but so the author of the book, The Information Society, hired me to do an hour television show for PBS called The Information Society, which I did. It's filled with what now is ancient history. The bank, you see the bank guys talking about what computers will do to the bank.
The Information Society, the authors, do you remember his name?
Yeah, it's Mark, M-A-R-C, Porat, P-O-R-A-T. And he was a guy who was a Stanford economics graduate. He wrote that as his doctoral thesis, and he got money from IBM. So IBM paid me to go into the street and talk to people. And I decided on Wall Street. At the time, we didn't care what my question was, which is why the sound is so bad. We really cared what the answer was. We put the boom right over the person. None of those people had been filmed. And most of those people wanted to be filmed.
So
It
you
was
had an
exciting.
assistant with a boom mic.
What did you say, Siku?
You had an assistant with a boom mic.
Yes. So there was two-man crew, myself, camera, sound. Sound is stood behind me. We talked to each other, and he hung a boom out over the person. Usually, first shot, the person would look up and see the boom and then look down and not notice it anymore.
Did you have any badge that made you look like you were from a professional media entity?
Let me tell you, holding a 16 millimeter camera, you look like a professional. Thing is a monster. No, I didn't have a badge. But I
Yeah,
was
I
a
was.
New Yorker, but I was a New Yorker and I could talk to New Yorkers. New Yorkers talk, as you know, a style. And I love the style. I still love the style. Well, North Carolina people talk a style. Chicago people talk a style. I don't know if San Francisco has a style. I'm thinking about it. I've interviewed people in most cities. Cleveland, Ohio has a style. Portland, Maine has a style. Miami is a style, but New York is unique, don't you think?
I definitely think so. Direct, uh, a little bit of bite to it, as they say. Um, you're exhausted. Most people who came to visit me on the East Coast, it was in New Jersey, let's say, dad's still working in New York, or maybe he had just retired, and people would come from Europe or other places come to see me. I take them to New York, and I said, you want to think of New York as a half-day trip. The other half will be, chilling at the library, at a coffee shop, at a restaurant, at a movie, whatever. If you try to be on your feet all day in New York, the sound, the air quality, the energy of the place will exhaust you. It's happened to every one of them. I'd say 50 people have come to
Let me
see
point
me and
out to
seen
you
New
that
York.
New Jersey is not New York. And we New
Yeah,
Yorkers think of New Jersey. Well, I always thought of New Jersey as a great place for workers. For some reason, New Jersey workers work their butts off. And all up and down northern New Jersey, there are drug companies and other companies that were considered New Jersey workers. I filmed New Jersey workers, different from New York. And I agree with you about the coffee shop in New York. My God, the energy. I miss that in Santa Cruz. In Santa Cruz, you ordered something, and the guy's talking to his friend. He continues talking to his friend. Doesn't
yeah,
serve you right away.
yeah,
In
yeah,
New York, they do.
yeah. I just went through outside of Paris near Versailles. I did a month-long trip. I spent almost 6 years of my life in France, all told, since '79 till now. And I did about a month tour. And one of my favorite things to do in France is to go to the boulangerie patisserie, the bakery pastry shops owned by the people who are working there, who get up at 3 in the morning, put their blood, sweat, and tears into that business and kept the tradition. Maybe it's their third, fourth generation boulangerie, bakery type people. And just to have 10 seconds, 20 seconds of a little chit chat back and forth with them. Hello, where are you coming from? Hello, thank you. And it's refreshing. You're not just a number, and then they give you some quality stuff that wasn't made like by Safeway or something with chemicals. It's a real authentic piece of pastry, real authentic bread. They have the old school machine that's electric, but it's very old school. They can put your loaf in there, and then the machine slices, makes nice slices for you. They bag it up, and you say hello or goodbye to the person behind you. It's a very nice daily experience for a lot of people in France and in other places around the world.
Now, I've interviewed people in Paris. They are classy, the friend and opinionated. You gotta to do a good interview. You gotta have people. People gotta tell you how they feel, their opinion. It doesn't make it right or wrong, by the way. Feelings aren't right or wrong. They're my feeling. The French people have strong feelings. This is good. This is not good.
Yeah,
They didn't do that right. I love Paris.
yeah. I think that Paris and New York have that direct communication and a sort of an underlying complaint or gripe to many of the three-sentence conversations you'll have with people. Like the famous Jewish response. But who am I to complain? That type of a thing. You'll find that type of sentiment in Paris as well.
I give people a chance to complain. I give them a chance to shine in my interviews
Yeah.
because behind the complaint, sometimes they don't realize that they're complaining. When you point out, I say to somebody, "Do you like anything about it?" I mean, you must like something about it. They flip 100%. I do too. Yeah.
So I I have written a few books on fitness, athletes, mindset, and psychology, all rolled into one. But three books on that, working on a fourth. And Muhammad Ali is someone since 1968. I was a kid, 6 years old, been captivated by the man. And for a time of maybe 2 decades, he might have been the most famous person recognized around the world. And it wasn't his boxing, it was really who he was, what he had to say, his aura, his communication skills. I think he graduated high school, but he didn't pass the uh, the IQ type test they give you to get into the military during the draft. And then the powers, because they wanted to make set an example of Muhammad Ali, they changed the grade so they could draft him. But I imagine the racial type of a thing was, you know, big part of your generation and also mine. What's going to happen to the person who has, descendant from African ancestors? What's going to happen to them? And I imagine at Wall Street in '79, not a whole lot of black people working on Wall Street. In the '80s, my father worked in Wall Street, and I did see some people at his company. And one guy that was working with my dad, who I got to spend 3 hours with, a trader on the stock exchange, but working at the office doing the trades, not at the exchange itself. He said the thing, and he told me this. I remember things from 40 years ago like they were yesterday, and I was just a young guy in my 20s. And he said these black guys have to do 10 times the professional work and alertness work and homework as everybody else. That's what they have to do to make it in this industry. And this was, I would guess, 1984-ish. Tell me your thoughts on this type of sentiment.
I filmed Muhammad Ali. It's a clip from my film is on my YouTube channel. It was a film I was hired to film called The Fight. And there's a fight between Frazier and Ali. Ali, it didn't much matter that he was black. He was a character. Everything he said was poetic, shocking. It's like Paul Simon or James Taylor. They seem to write poetry. They write poetry. They speak poetry. Yeah. So Muhammad Ali surpassed race, I feel. At first, I was a civil rights advocate, so I hired black people as cameramen and soundmen in my crews. That was rare because they weren't able to join the union at first. Union didn't accept them, camera union. And the ones who got in were, they were not black inner city people, certainly not as we know today. The two cultures, the culture of the black inner city and the rest of America is split like that. They're two totally different cultures, like we're living in a different country. That's kind of sad. The black people that entered the careers that I knew, they were college educated, they were smart, they were very self-conscious. They knew that the person looking at them was seeing them as black. It was something different if you didn't grow up with blacks. Did you grow up in a town with blacks next to you?
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
I started out in Maplewood, which is suburbia, 25 miles from New York, and we had lots of ethnicities there. And then things got a little rough. You know, I started getting into some neighborhood squabbles and animosity to kids that I had played with for years. And all of a sudden we hit that age where you're starting to show how tough you are and who's your pal and you're not in our group type of thing. And my parents, since that, and after 3 generations of living in that town, which was not too far from Orange and Newark, they moved us out to Clinton, New Jersey, which is almost into Easton, Pennsylvania. So we went from suburbia to one of my friends says in 1972 when we moved there, he said where we lived in New Jersey was almost Appalachia. There were still hillbillies with one tooth living in that area. And we liked it. We liked all that slow pace person on the front porch or at the general store and going to the horse pulling things. And we actually had a farm. We had sheep, chickens, a couple of goats, and a couple of pigs, and a huge garden and woods to roam around. And so I think that was a really big part of who I am in terms of the peacefulness and the self-discovery.
I'll bet. I'll bet. I grew up around no black people because Levittown, Long Island had a law against you couldn't sell your home to a black person. Eventually, black people did move in. So I didn't know any black people, but I didn't know any people dressed in hijab, Arab people either. I mean, we knew Italians. Italians and Jews were sort of the same people, and we related to each other. The black people, meeting black people and working with black people wasn't the cultural divide that exists today between the people. I find a lot of people on my channel who you could call racist, but I'm not racist. They don't like black inner city, whatever you want to call it, rap culture. I understand that. I understand them. They don't want that part of their community. And unfortunately, all black people get pegged with it, and the black community has not spoken out against it. Look at the Diddy trial. Where are the black people? Where is the black community attacking that guy for his treatment of people? I don't understand that.
Denzel Washington and the other person who's about 20 years older than Denzel, who is in The Shawshank Redemption, famous Black American actor. Both of those people have been for 10 years or so being featured in the media criticizing parts of the Black culture, just as you and I would criticize parts of our culture. And they've hit it pretty hard. And they talked about success and hard work and lots of really good stuff that you might have heard from a religious leader, a mentor, or your high school favorite teacher. Really good stuff. So I'm proud of those guys for doing that naturally, organically.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, I think it's important. And it's sad on my YouTube channel. It's sad to see. I post a lot on the black culture. I don't know if you've noticed it. All interviews that I did 1992 for my television series on the 60s. So it's people in 1990 talking about 1960 and 1970. So now that's a long time ago, isn't it? Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm 83 years old. I'm 84 actually.
You look good, David.
Well, I've had a stroke and that knocked me on my ass. I was 20. I was 83 and 20 until that stroke. And that affects my speech, which I don't love. Do you think the speech is okay? Does it
You're
sound
doing
okay?
fine. Yeah, you're doing fine. My dad has had four, two that he knew about, and he's 95 living out on that farm area in New Jersey and can't drive anymore. Still wants to drive. I've got two sisters and we're looking out for him and we're hopefully going to make sure that he doesn't strong arm us with what I would call like a fear-based response, because when you're an elder, you don't want to lose some of your independence and all those other things. But
Right.
you have to move on. I think one of the courses in college, I went to the college in Richmond, Virginia, and one of the things I heard friends taking was a course called Death, Dying, and Old Age. And I said, boy, if I had one more semester, that sounds like a good course to take. Why wouldn't we learn about those types of things, young in life? I think if you went back 100 years, the generations living together with the great grandparents, great uncles, you'd see all that. But in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we started to move away from family, had less family events than your generation and my parents' generation. It was all about family dinners, and whether somebody might have a bar mitzvah or a christening or a birthday or Christmas, Easter, it was a lot of family gatherings. And then the young people got to learn and experience what was going on with all those types of things, health concerns, passing on, who's going to get the house when someone so dies, great grandpa dies, all those types of things.
Boy, that's an interesting insight. I agree. Yeah, I agree. Certainly, the old people were around in my culture when I was young, although we moved to the suburbs. And once you move to the suburbs, the old people weren't there anymore.
Uh,
I never thought about old age until it hit me. That was dumb, but it was true. It allowed me to continue to be my young self. I called myself a young filmmaker until I was 40.
the the photographer who made Shaft in 1970, black fellow, did you ever run into him, or what did you think of his work?
You have to say his name again.
The movie Shaft, New York City, with
I
a
did
black.
not film any chefs. Boy, are they easy to film. They're real characters. I mean, uh, you become the head of the kitchen because you are a leader. And yeah, you've interviewed some interesting people in your life
Yeah,
for your books.
I'm up to on athletes, coaches, doctors, psychologists, family members of athletes. I am, and also promoters. I'm up to 3,612 interviews since 2009 on that
Why are you
specific subject.
traveling? Why are you in Europe?
I doing what they call digital nomad lifestyle. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'd like you to talk about it. I
Well,
want it.
yeah, you. So, and it's for, if you imagine John McEnroe and Jimmy Connor's life and part of Muhammad Ali's life, it was, traveling frequently, going to new places, being in new zones with new people. And I got the bug of travel when I was 16, going to France on a golf exchange outside of Versailles. And I've really never let up on that. And then about 2017, I started getting bored in Santa Barbara, California, which is one of the nicest small cities in the world. How do you get bored there? Well, if you're out and about like I am, going to all these events, you see the same people over and over. You've already had 3, 5 years of conversations with those people. I'm not a good small talker. I'm a good conversation opener, and I'm a good story listener and storyteller. But once I've heard that person's story or they've heard mine, we've done that for 3 years. I need some new stories. And so I started in 2017 doing this living around the world in 3 month to 1 month to 2 week increments. And I'm in a different place all those times.
Wow. Are you staying in bed and breakfasts or hotels, or do you take an apartment?
So what happened right at the time that I started doing this lifestyle is Airbnb started taking off, and their stock price and everything else, it just became monstrous. So uh, people were converting the rooms in their homes that their kids moved out of to a separate rental, or converting garages, or this type of thing, or buying a fourplex and having one, two, three Airbnbs. So that's just caught on, and now the whole world is traveling around. And you would, in the summertime or in the popular times of the year, the hotels are full, the Airbnbs are full, and that's just the way it is. Everybody's traveling, everybody's got the bug. And if you live in Ukraine right now. I'm in a place in Montenegro right now where there are lots of people from Russia and the Ukraine, and they're both on vacation and they don't fight because that's a government thing. That's a political thing. It's horrible. But I don't, they're not talking politics and they're not talking about bombed apartment buildings with each other. They're just going on vacation. And I think in World War II, you wouldn't have seen anything like that. I would guess no Americans came to Europe from the Olympics on vacation all the way through 1946 or 7 or 8, somewhere in there. There were no vacation. There was very little business travel. But the people during this Yugoslav war, which was almost 6 years in the early, starting in around 1989 to 1996, they told me these people here were involved in that because that's a recent war. They said people were still taking vacations. You know, Dubrovnik, one of the most beautiful cities in the former Yugoslavia, ancient city, that's where they held a lot of their armaments. So, of course, they came in with airplanes and I think even battleships and bombed the heck out of Dubrovnik. So, this is what was going on. But people were 2 miles away on the beach when these things were happening, if you can imagine that.
No, I can't. That's amazing. And it's also amazing about the Russians and the Ukrainians where you are. So you're not in Manhattan? I see Manhattan behind you.
Yeah, you're familiar with the virtual background?
Well, I see it there. It's a beautiful
Yeah,
shot.
that's a
Yeah, I
beautiful
love it.
shot.
Yeah. Can you show where you are now?
Uh, I can't show you where I am now because I'm way inside of a hotel, and there's no way for me to get out there with the computer, unfortunately. But I'll send you to your email a video of where I am. How about that?
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd love to go there. It sounds good. I always
So
tend to go. These days, I travel. Got to have a warm beach. Santa Cruz is cold water, as you know.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I need warm water. So
yeah.
that's not enough of a reason to travel. I
Do you
liked,
have
in the day, obviously it isn't good now, but I liked Jerusalem a lot. I thought Jerusalem was a fantastic city.
I spent some time with people from Israel on my trip in France, and they highly recommended traveling there. I would love that.
Oh, it's beautiful. First of all, they grow all the food in the country. So you're eating really healthy food. The mix of cultures, Christian and Jewish, is fascinating.
Yeah.
Jesus' story is fascinating. You go to right where it happened. That's amazing. Yeah, I found it, and people are generally, well, I don't know how they are now. This place is getting bombed. Um, War is strange, huh?
It's yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I was going to ask you, you're were you a practicing religious person growing up, or just culturally a certain way, or what would you say your background is with your family?
No, I practice no religion.
No
Um,
religion.
no, I tended to feel that I am a Jew, and if I was a Jew at the time of Jesus, I believe I would have gone with Jesus. So I would have been a disciple or a
Yeah,
member of the, well, wasn't Christian yet, but of the Jewish Jesus
Jesus,
group,
a Jesus follower.
a Jesus follower. And but I'm culturally New York and
Yeah.
part of the Jewish culture of New York, which I feel
What
I communicate that.
do you remember, David, any conversations you had with your close family members or people in the community about their life, maybe European ancestry, and then what they thought of the
Sure,
country of Israel?
I interviewed my mother 50 years ago on videotape before she died. She told me all kinds of things about her life in Ukraine, which were horrible. Uh, had a pretty horrible early life. Yes, I do remember my father's family. My grandfather was a major military person in the United States. My father didn't talk about his father, and that is very painful for me because I think I'm like my father's father. You know how they say you're like your grandparent? I've read some things that the guy wrote, and I'm like him. I'd like to know him. So we'll know now If you interview your ancestors while they're alive, put it aside, your grandchildren will really love looking at their grandparents and see connections that are inarticulate, that are
Yeah,
not articulated.
yeah,
You'll see what the genetic link. They say we have 14 generations. We carry our genes for 14 generations, including trauma, especially trauma. If you have
yeah.
a trauma in your early life, that's carried to the next generation, and you end up with anxiety. You didn't know where it came from. That's fascinating to me. Why am I anxious? Why does that make me anxious? Well, you don't understand, and it's coming from your great grandparents from Europe or wherever.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that part of the tradition, and you could call it what would you call that? An energy, like
Mhm.
a not an evolutionary energy, but some other type of an energy that's in there. And some of these movies that become popular, like The Matrix, or ones that have a wise person who can, channel energies from ancient spirits and
Yeah.
parts of nature and these types of things. I think that's really fascinating. And for Western philosophy or any philosophy to be a naysayer about those things, it really cuts out a really fun thing to just ponder. You don't have to embrace every part of it, but just it certainly makes for a fun conversation. It makes for fun literature,
My wife
filmmaking.
has an amazing instincts. What the hell are
Yeah,
instincts? I don't have them. She asks sort of questions about the future, and they're always right, always right.
yeah.
Some people seem to have that ability. I don't have that ability. I've been a very bad investor on Wall Street. Yeah.
How would you have done if you held just 20% of the things that you owned in, let's say, the late 60s, those stocks that you owned back then?
Well, I was involved with computers very early and did nothing. I didn't buy Apple stock. Dumb. I had an Apple One. Those people who remember it. I've done a film on my YouTube channel on the M. You see the M1 in the computer store that I filmed in 69. No, sorry, 1991 in the what was it called? The Ultimate something was called. It was a big computer store. And then Fry's. I don't know what store you went to, but most people remember those early stores, those incredible stores with amazing technology. It was amazing to fun games and television, computers, and all kinds of programs for kids. It was such a rich experience.
Was Two Guys an electronics store?
I don't think so. What did we call them? Um, I don't remember. I do remember Fry's. You wouldn't know that as an East Coast person. And that's what it's called. The ultimate something store was a giant computer store. You walked in and lights were everywhere and computer things were everywhere. Programs were going on screens. It sounds silly now, but at the time it was thrilling. There isn't anything is equal for young people today, I don't think. Well, I guess no experience like that. It was fantastic.
I, I just looked up Two Guys, defunct American department store, discount chain founded in 1946 by brothers Herbert and Sidney Hupschman in Harrison, New Jersey, selling major appliances such as televisions. They acquired the manufacturers of the Vornado appliance brand in 1959, spread beyond the New York City metropolitan area to more than 100 locations in upstate New York, Eastern PA, etc. So as far as
Yeah.
California, they even made it to California.
Do you remember Eddie's?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, well, Eddie appeared on television and he would say, I'm Eddie and I don't have anything. I'm not a special guy, but I sell blah, blah, blah. And he would tell you about it. The advertising agencies hated that idea. That was real people on television. I loved it. there was Carvel ice cream, and Tom Carvel came on. I'm Tom Carvel. I'm in Riverhead, Long Island. We make ice cream cakes. How do you like the ice cream cake, Joe? And Joe says what he thinks. I love those commercials. They were real. I hate commercial advertising. I don't know about you, Siku, but it's fake. They're doing fake with a lot of fancy editing and digital effects. I don't like it. I believe an ordinary person talking to the camera, a real person, would have more effect on people for very expensive ads. They pay a lot of money for those ads than what they're presenting. In fact, I flip the ads off on my television.
I watched with great interest. I have not had a television since 1991, but a friend of mine gave me the DVD series of the very well done series called Mad Men about the advertisers on Madison Avenue. Have you seen any of those episodes?
No, I
So
haven't.
done 15, 18 years ago, extremely well done. Everything's perfectly done with period. I actually watched the making of Mad Men. So the fashion designer talked about how she would go into thrift stores and find things. And then if they weren't quality she wanted, she would make them to get the desks and the phones. It's just a fascinating story, the automobiles, etc. But my mother spent a short amount of time before she got married working in advertising for public television, and she had known that
Frozen.
whole Madison Avenue crowd type thing for a short period of time. And she said that film is that series is very accurate. Have you had any interactions with the Madison Avenue types at meetings or
Yeah, I used
dinners
to do
or?
commercials. They hired me to do real paper commercials. I knew that advertising wasn't for me. I could laugh. I laughed at some of the advertising I was doing. Um, Fake. I'm not too good at fake.
Yeah, yeah. How about convincing people that smoking is good for you and brings you vitality that they were able to do for a long time in the advertising world?
I want you to talk about suburbia. Think that you're talking to your grandchildren who don't know what suburbia is or means. What was it like to be in suburbia at that time? What were the neighbors like? What did it feel like? Oh, they said, I can do that. And then they tell the story. So setting, and knowing who the audience is critically important, I think. Everything I make a video every day on YouTube. And I know who I'm talking to in part because the viewers comment. I read the comments. I can see what they're interested in, what they care about, how they want to tell their own stories. I get a huge amount of stories, Seco, on my YouTube channel from people telling their stories about the experiences they've had. I love it. I read them.
Do you interview people, David?
Yes, on occasion. I don't do much because I get a huge amount of requests. Please interview me. I wrote a book. I my grandchild needs it. Uh, I I have to feel that the subject of the interview matters to my subscribers, will be
Mhm.
helpful to my subscribers. So with my stroke, I interview myself and I interview other people who have strokes, write about their experiences. Pretty tough, by the way. Most
Yeah,
people, what a
yeah,
crappy thing. Young people with a stroke, ick.
yeah.
That's rough.
What happens with most stroke people? Is it most live after the stroke, or most take a take take
I think
themselves out?
about yeah, about 80% live.
80% live.
1% live 20 years. Hmm. I'm determined to be one. Hmm.
1% live 20 years after a stroke.
Yeah,
So most people check out within 20 years.
yeah. I know you wrote a book and you practice how to make your body do the best it can with aging. That's really good. I was in very good physical condition before I had my stroke, which helped me walk and move. Yeah.
Yeah, the mind, body, and spirit connection is something that I've been interested in for a long time. And I had a a supervisor who became a really close friend of mine on the Paris Stock Exchange when I worked there in the 80s. I was 20 years old. I had a summer job there, and he and I stayed really close. And he was
What a
bipolar.
lucky summer job. Wow.
That was a
Lucky.
lucky summer job. Yeah, I had chutzpah and I had French language ability, and I had a father that had spent a lot of years on Wall Street, so I had some connections. But I was interested in that field. I liked the pulse of that whole thing, and and it was great. You know, we worked with paper. It was right before the computer age took over. This was in the summer of 1983, and within the next 2 years, the computers took over everything. In my opinion, they took the romantic side, the human element, the that special flavor, like I mentioned, going into the boulangerie patisserie. They took that out, and then the
Yeah.
stock exchange eventually became a museum in the late 80s, and nobody went to it anymore. Everything just happened from your computer, which I think was a shame. Over to you, David, for your thoughts on this.
I think that same as you do. I feel I have two sons. Getting a job now is near impossible for a teenager. When we were kids, getting a job was easy. You went into the local store and they needed you for the summer. Summer jobs are hard to get, and that's tragic for this generation. They have a hard time leaving the home and making the money to leave the home. That's totally different than I experienced. It was so much money for the teenager and the earlier 20s person. I could have gotten many jobs. You too, I'm sure.
Yeah,
They
I
were,
what I did, being a planner, which was I think one of my stronger characteristics that I was born with. I've been a planner my whole life, and what I would do is I would figure out where I wanted to be the next summer and what type of work might someone hire me for. And then I tried to get that job, 8 months to 10 months ahead of time, not wait till the 2 months before the end of my school semester in April or something like that, and then pick up a job starting in the end of May. I
I
tried to
don't know
get
what
that.
makes, I don't know what makes the kind of person you are. I understand that I am one. My wife is one. Other people, they don't seem to jump ahead. They don't seem to see that you can talk to anybody if you do it, you're wise and you, but the internet is so incredible. It allows for information, which allows me to talk to anyone, seek any job. The local baker, I can see what he does. I can see what he's offering. I can even see video with YouTube. Isn't YouTube amazing? 10 million videos a day get sent to YouTube. That's 10 million individuals who I learn from. I do learn from. I find that reading about somebody, searching Google and reading is less good than searching the name on YouTube and hearing them talk, finding out what they care about for making any connection, including you. I said yes to your interview from your videos. I looked at
Yeah,
them first.
thank you for accepting. I thought the connection when I felt it immediately when I watched your Wall Street video. I felt it. You start speaking to the camera. I said, this guy is a kindred spirit. I said, I hope he says yes. He's a listener and a storyteller and a man who allows people to speak. And I think besides being a planner, one of the other things some of my close contacts tell me is that, if they're going to a psychologist or they're going to their rabbi or pastor or whatever, they said, hey, when I'm with them and they start to unload, what do we call that? Being cathartic and telling these deep things that are going on with them, struggles, trials, tribulations, sadness, whatever, or even happiness. They said the thing that they appreciate the most about me is that I listen. I might ask a probing question or a clarification question, and then I'll listen some more. And they said it's very soothing, and it has integrity because what they're sharing is not something that anyone should take for granted in this busy rush life that we have with some superficiality. some propaganda, some just bluffing our way through, and some really good stuff. They don't often have that time to break down those deep thoughts that they have, and now they have the chance to do that. And if I can facilitate that and help them on their way, and then even be, I don't want to just call it entertainment because that sounds not deep enough, but
Well, you are
engaged by it.
soothing. Yes, I agree. Talking to
I'm
you is
engaged by it.
soothing. Talking to you is soothing. Isn't that strange? That may be your face as well as your attitude. I don't know what it is. Yeah, it's comforting to talk to you. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
I,
nice.
I tell people that somebody along the way when I was in my 20s said, you have a bartender's personality. You're not judging, you're just listening, right? And you've got a moment to share with somebody. And I said, that's interesting. I said, the only bars I hang out are under, and those are the chin up bars and the dip bars. I'm on the dip bars and under the chin up bar, kind of like Jack LaLanne. So those are the bars that I hang out in.
Uh, I have to consciously put aside my inner voice in order to talk to you or anybody. It chatters all the time. People know this. You have yourself, you hear the brain chattering, the mind, and then you have your awareness, which is up here, listening to the mind. Like why you saying that? I discuss things with myself. My observer talks with my chatterer. That's part of communication, I think. People who tell stories badly don't know they're not listening to their chatter. Person who says, my mother used to own an antique shop, and all the people who came in, I remember when that was 25 cents. They'd say that 20 times, not aware that they were doing that. That means to me lack of awareness.
Yeah,
Awareness.
slowing
Awareness
down
is a
to
big
listen
thing.
is, and take a breath. Slow, like in the yoga we learn about breathing. A lot of the oh, Eastern philosophy, they concentrate on that. Now that's coming into relaxation. So it's not just talking to the psychiatrist or counselor, it's breathing and, doing mantras or, people in the Catholicism, they do the Stations of the Cross. And if
Mm.
you look at that soothingness part of it, allowing all of your mind, body, and spirit to connect in a peaceful way with some purpose, it's very helpful. So when is the first time you were exposed to that idea of relaxation, breathing, peacefulness?
It was drugs. I took mescaline when I was 27, and I became aware. Prior to that, I was not aware that there was me chattering. Um, I don't recommend it for anybody, by the way. I'm not saying that. But for me, it changed the trajectory of my whole life. I heard myself say something I didn't believe to a friend of mine. Boy, I'll never, I said, tell me that, ask me that question again. Let me try again to say what I really feel, as opposed to what my mind was used to saying. It was a silly nothing, too. It was, do you believe in air conditioners in your home? Well, I didn't because those were rich people. So I said, I don't believe in air conditioners. Wait a minute, let me think about that. I wish I had an air conditioner, was what I meant to say. And that moment, I heard myself say something that wasn't true, that I didn't feel. It's a profound moment for me.
Tell us if you remember from your conversations with your mother and her family and your interview that you did with her, any highlight that you want to share.
Oh, sure, thank you. Well, she said they threw the garbage out the back window and the poops from the toilet out the back window. The roads were dirt. She was Jewish, so she lived in Ukraine, and she was not permitted to go between the two churches that were at the edge of town. She was stuck to town. My grandfather, he looked at eggs with a candle to see that the egg was healthy, which is a job he did when he came to the United States. Also, I forgot what they call it, and he'd hold a candle up and he'd look at the egg. My grandmother was raped by people, and my mother remembered hundreds of bodies all over the lawn, and there were potatoes growing in the field, and the people ravenously ate the potatoes. She never forgot that. Dead people. But she came without an accent. She learned how to speak English without an accent. She graduated at the head of her class at Rhode Island High School, Rhode Island High School, where she won the public speaking award. So she was smart. She loved America, and she let me do whatever I want. Her attitude towards child raising was, "Who is my son? And let's see what he can do." And whenever I did anything, she was enjoyed it very much. She'd smile at me for all my crazy adventures rather than be worried about me. It was so much better than what she had grown up. She remembers World War II as being a wonderful time. The community was all together. They had to turn off their lights and pull curtain down on the window so they couldn't see where they lived. They were afraid about bombs in Queens, New York. Queens was enough near the water that they were afraid they would get hit. She loved World War II. She she thought the community was wonderful to see America together. Yes, it's a wonderful thing. Patriot. She was a real patriot, I would say. Put her money where her mouth was.
In his last years around, did your dad understand you, connect with you, any of those types of things?
My father was an artist in New York City. He did book jacket covers. Um, his father was a military officer and a very successful one. My father was considered, his father considered him kind of the opposite of Charles Atlas. For those who know what Charles Atlas is, my grandfather believed in Charles Atlas and the body. And my father was kind of a loser, but he was an artist and he was supported in that art. And he supported me as a filmmaker. He believed that I should do whatever I want with the camera, which is what I did. And there were times I got blasted in newspapers for it. My parents were unaffected by that. Yeah, they were unaffected by what anybody said about you. You do what you want to do and you do it well. I believe that now.
At David Hoffman, Hoffman, filmmaker is how you find David. And I'll have that link below the video once it's up on YouTube. And we're blessed to have had this time to connect with David, who shared some wonderful stories. And we had a very warm interaction. So I'm very pleased with that. And I'm Sifu Slim at sifuslim.com. Fitness, wellness, and life coach. And if anyone out there has other people that they think would be good guests on my podcast, I started out with all the things I mentioned before about athletes, fitness, health, wellness, and mindset. But now I've opened it up over the past few years to an open format program so we can talk about everything. And so that's what we do. And we try to tell good stories. Over to David for a final word.
Thank you very much, Zico. Good luck to you in your travels.
Big thanks, brother.